The galaxy trembled beneath the announcement. Across countless worlds, the message ignited every broadcast, every neural stream, every cosmic relay. The galactic arena had opened again, the ancient test of supremacy where civilizations sent their greatest to fight before the eyes of all creation. Titans of flame, beasts born of fusion, machines older than stars, all prepared their champions. When the Council's decree reached the blue world on the spiral arm's edge, silence answered. For days Earth said nothing. Then one transmission arrived, a simple affirmation, no introduction, no demand. The Council expected fleets or genetically perfected warriors. What they received was a single arrival code. One being. When the transport doors opened, the arena's scanners hesitated. The figure who stepped out was not what they expected. No exosuit, no neural mesh, no gleaming weapon, just a man, plain and steady, walking forward with the stillness of someone who feared nothing. Around him, ambassadors whispered in disbelief. This is it? This is their champion? Others laughed, confident that this was mockery or madness. Even the Council's overseers, beings of radiant intellect and arrogance, regarded him as spectacle, an animal allowed into a cathedral. But he neither bowed nor spoke. His stride was unhurried, eyes fixed ahead, posture unbroken by the weight of their judgment. The arena itself was a construct beyond comprehension, a star-sized crucible orbiting a dying sun. The light it cast fractured across crystalline spires, turning every movement into a reflection. The alien champions gathered, towering forms wrapped in armor that could withstand suns, blades that could cut through dimension. Yet the human did not even raise a guard. He looked at them not with challenge, but with quiet understanding, as if he had seen worse and endured more. Sensors scanned his biology, reporting weakness, fragility, and absence of augmentation. The results caused laughter throughout the upper tiers. The machine lords mocked. The war-born predators snarled in amusement. The Council dismissed him as doomed before the first strike was even called. Still, the man stood unmoved. His breathing was slow, rhythm steady. To those who watched closely, there was something unsettling about that stillness. He was not calm out of ignorance. He was waiting. And though the galaxy's elite saw only a fragile organism, the human body carried scars older than memory, marks from wars, disasters, and evolutions that forced his species to adapt where others perished. His silence was not absence of confidence. It was the echo of history. The arena's sound amplifiers magnified every noise. The air trembled with the rumble of alien champions testing their weapons, energy humming through their veins. Yet the loudest thing in that moment was his heartbeat, unaugmented, human, persistent. The announcers continued their commentary, amused by the absurdity of Earth's choice. A primitive standing among gods, one said. Perhaps a symbolic offering, another replied. Or perhaps they simply misunderstood the invitation. When his eyes lifted toward the Council's dais, the laughter dimmed. Something in his gaze carried weight beyond words, an understanding that unsettled even beings of millennia. It wasn't defiance or arrogance. It was acknowledgement. A quiet statement without speech. You wanted a champion. You'll have one. Around him, the atmosphere shifted. The nearby combatants felt it first, a stillness creeping into their instincts, an unspoken awareness that something beneath the surface of that fragile frame was watching them in ways they couldn't measure. The human's presence was wrong. It didn't fit into their equations of strength or hierarchy. He didn't radiate power, yet the air seemed to bend around his composure. In the viewing chambers, millions across the stars watched through their screens, expecting blood and quick defeat. To them, Earth was irrelevant, a backwater sphere whose inhabitants clawed through their own mud. But as that lone figure stood at the arena's center, the image carried something different, something unspoken but undeniable. The rest of the galaxy had evolved through control, through manipulation of nature. Humanity had evolved through suffering. And in that suffering, something unquantifiable had emerged, a resilience that could not be measured in data or DNA. No music accompanied his entrance, no banners waved, no anthem played. Yet somehow, the silence weighed heavier than any declaration. The council speaker rose, declaring the cycle begun. Energy fields shimmered, the arena's core flared to life, and the entire galaxy leaned forward, ready to witness the extinction of a species' pride. But for the man who stood there, it was never about survival or spectacle. It was about message. And though no one understood it yet, history would remember this moment not as the beginning of a contest, but as the moment the galaxy learned to be afraid of silence. The arena came alive with a hum that shook the air itself, a vibration that crawled into the bones of every being present. The ground beneath the human rippled, reshaping itself into alien terrains, craters, molten veins, fractured planes of gravity flux, all meant to challenge even the mightiest. The walls rose like continents, lined with watchers whose eyes gleamed from 1,000 worlds. Every lens focused on the solitary human standing still while titans prepared for slaughter. He neither crouched nor raised his fists. He simply breathed. Across from him, champions assembled, colossal entities forged by civilizations that conquered galaxies. One radiated plasma so hot the air distorted around it. Another floated, wrapped in psionic fire, thought alone capable of crushing armor. The metallic warborn, plated in obsidian steel, unfolded blade wings that sang like sirens. Their combined energy made the light tremble, the fabric of the arena groaning under their power. Yet amid the noise, the human's pulse was steady, unreadable. The council observed, their tones smug, declaring the match a formality before it began. When the signal resonated, a single tone that split silence, chaos erupted. Beams of light tore through the air, and thunder screamed as energy collided. The ground disintegrated into dust clouds. Spectators saw storms of fire and thought the human consumed instantly. But when the smoke cleared, the man remained. No scorch marks, no wounds, just faint traces of motion no camera could isolate. Systems malfunctioned, frames skipped, data corrupted. The galaxy's most advanced tracking technology couldn't record his movements. To the eye, he hadn't moved at all. To the enemies, he had already passed through them. The first creature collapsed, its armor fractured in perfect symmetry, a single-point strike that split its core like glass. The crowd froze. Then the second fell, a machine older than Earth's civilization, its weapon arms severed so precisely that sparks escaped like stars dying in miniature. No one saw it happen. Only the aftermath remained. Panic rippled through the Colosseum. Commentators stuttered mid-sentence, words failing to explain what logic rejected. The human exhaled once, almost soundless, as if adjusting pace rather than celebrating victory. Around him, more opponents advanced, driven by disbelief more than courage. Their roars filled the void, their power merging into a storm meant to erase matter. The arena's shields flared to their limits. Yet again, sensors blacked out. When the light returned, the storm was gone, replaced by silence and debris. The human stood among it untouched. His expression didn't shift. No rage, no joy, just observation, like a scientist studying reactions to an experiment long predicted. From the upper tiers, the council's analysts shouted data, speed beyond measurable limits, motion inconsistent with gravity, reflex impossible without augmentation. The conclusion struck fear into every intellect present. He wasn't enhanced. This was natural. A byproduct of evolution unfiltered by comfort. Every other race had built strength through machines, cybernetics, and psychic conditioning. Humanity, forced to endure its own brutality, had built something different, instinct sharpened into precision. The surviving combatants faltered, hesitating between attack and retreat. They had never known hesitation before. The human didn't exploit it, he simply existed in it, letting their fear ripen. One lunged, desperate to end the spectacle. The human step forward was small, almost casual, yet the motion broke the creature's stance entirely. A second later, it fell, chest imploded, armor bending inward like paper. No wasted movement. No effort visible. The galaxy's audience began to understand what they were seeing. Not arrogance, not defiance, but calculation. The human wasn't fighting to prove dominance, he was demonstrating control. His species had spent centuries mastering chaos, wars, disasters, extinction-level events, and turned survival into art. Against such experience, power was meaningless. The council chambers fell quiet. The delegates shifted uneasily. For the first time in 1,000 cycles, they couldn't predict the outcome. Every champion designed to embody a civilization's pride had failed before a single human step. And as the dust settled once more, the man lowered his head slightly, almost in respect to the fallen, not as a victor but as someone who understood cost. The match continued, but the outcome was already written. The audience, once hungry for blood, now watched in silence, drawn not by violence but by revelation. Somewhere deep within every observer, an ancient instinct stirred, one their ancestors had long forgotten. The realization that beneath all their technology, power, and pride, something still existed in the universe capable of terrifying them without raising its voice. The air in the arena thickened with tension that no technology could disperse. The human no longer looked like a curiosity but something unknown, a fracture in the order the galaxy believed unshakable. The champions who remained had seen every opponent before reduced to ruin by brute force, yet none could decipher how this one moved, how he struck, or when. Their instruments returned only static. Their senses failed to predict him. He existed between perception and reality, acting not faster but purer, without hesitation, without wasted thought. They regrouped, creatures born from gravity wells and machine worlds, their forms glowing with energy that could melt moons. Strategy replaced arrogance, and for the first time, the arena's combatants united. Weapons merged, fields combined, reality warped under their synchronized assault. The man didn't flinch. His eyes narrowed slightly, assessing, calculating pathways invisible to others. When they attacked, it was with the force of extinction, planet-cracking heat, sonic bursts that shattered the air, psionic fields that tore at the mind itself. Yet in that storm, the human moved through gaps too narrow to exist, not evading but flowing. The attacks missed because he was never where they assumed he'd be. Each step left nothing behind but silence. The first of the united group fell, its core ruptured by a strike that used its own inertia against it. The second imploded as its internal systems turned on themselves, sabotaged through a motion so precise it seemed impossible. Observers from across the stars watched as the impossible became mechanical rhythm. He did not rush, did not strike in anger. Every movement was mathematical, stripped of emotion. He was not fighting, he was dismantling. In the observation tiers, beings of intellect beyond comprehension struggled to define it. Some called it instinct refined to perfection. Others whispered that it was madness, a level of focus where consciousness dissolves into purpose. But what terrified them most was how calm he remained. There was no triumph in his stance, no brutality in his actions. He was efficient, too efficient for war, too deliberate for mercy. It was as though violence to him was not act but language, and he spoke it fluently. The final 3 champions adjusted tactics, shifting the battlefield to their home environments. Gravity inverted, temperatures plummeted, atmosphere replaced by plasma. Each transition was meant to overwhelm him through adaptation limits. But he adapted faster. Every shift in condition became opportunity. His movements realigned seamlessly, body and mind syncing like they were built for chaos. The arena's artificial intelligence flagged hundreds of anomalies, muscle responses defying known physiology, heart rate unchanging under extremes. Humanity, it realized, had evolved to master change itself. As the fight dragged into minutes that felt eternal, fear overtook the surviving combatants. One of them screamed in a language made of light, a cry not of rage but disbelief. It lunged, desperate, claws cutting space itself. The human caught its motion mid-charge and redirected it with one twist of the wrist. The creature folded, energy bursting outward, consumed by its own strike. The others hesitated, instincts conflicting with logic. They saw prey, but every fiber of their being warned otherwise. He didn't advance. He simply waited, letting their fear build until their own aggression became unbearable. When they attacked again, he ended it. One fell from a blow so clean it made no sound. The other collapsed in a ripple of shattered kinetic force, armor crumbling like dry clay. And then there was nothing left to fight. The arena, designed to host destruction on a cosmic scale, fell into absolute stillness. Throughout the galaxy, broadcasts replayed fragments of the impossible. Analysts slowed the recordings, frame by frame, searching for comprehension. They found none. The conclusion spread like contagion. This was not technology, not sorcery, not luck. This was evolution unbound by fear. Humanity had not sought strength through conquest or augmentation. It had endured extinction, rebuilt through pain, and learned control in chaos. When the human finally straightened, dust settling around him, there was no triumph in his posture. Just acceptance, the quiet awareness of one who had done what was necessary. Around him, the fallen lay like broken monuments to arrogance. In that silence, every spectator understood, the galaxy had witnessed not a warrior, but a warning. The dust finally settled, and the world seemed to hold its breath. The human stood alone in the center of ruin, surrounded by what had once been the pride of civilizations. The glow of the arena dimmed, energy reserves depleted from the violence it had just contained. From the viewing decks, the council's envoys leaned forward, eyes wide, their arrogance stripped bare. What they had dismissed as an amusing spectacle had become something they could no longer comprehend. They demanded explanation, how a creature so unevolved could annihilate their champions. No answer came. The man did not move until one of the council's voices thundered through the arena, mechanical and layered with superiority, asking what force Earth had unleashed. Only then did he lift his gaze. His expression carried no defiance, no pride, only a calm finality that pierced deeper than fury. When he spoke, his words were measured, spoken in a tone too quiet for such a vast chamber, yet the sound carried to every corner. "You wanted Earth's champion," he said, voice steady. "You got humanity." The translation units hesitated, as though unwilling to transmit what they sensed beneath the words. Silence replaced mockery. The statement wasn't boastful. It was truth delivered like judgment. He continued, his voice unwavering. "We weren't made in your image. We were forged by everything that tried to kill us and failed. Fire, ice, disease, time, we survived them all. You fight to prove strength. We fight because we remember what happens when we don't." His gaze drifted toward the shattered remains of the last alien titan, then back to the council. "You call this an arena? To us, it's just another day we refuse to die." The audience fell utterly still. Even species incapable of fear recognized it now. The human spoke not as an individual, but as the echo of an entire species' endurance. Every civilization present had conquered by power, but none had survived by will alone. That distinction reshaped everything they thought they understood about dominance. The council's composure fractured. Their leader, wrapped in light and metal, tried to reassert control, declaring that this demonstration violated the arena's purpose. But no one listened. The crowd's silence was not ignorance, it was recognition. They had seen something purer than strength, inevitability. The human took one step forward, and the energy fields of the chamber flickered as though reacting to his intent. His presence alone bent attention, not through force but gravity of conviction. He stopped before the council's raised platform, eyes meeting those who ruled entire star clusters. "You wanted proof of what we are," he said softly. "Now you have it. You asked for a champion, but we don't fight for entertainment. We fight to remind the universe that survival doesn't belong to the powerful, it belongs to those who refuse surrender." The council's leader tried to speak, but the words faltered. There was nothing left to challenge. Across galaxies, millions watched the broadcast, their own histories reflected in his words, forgotten instincts awakening beneath layers of progress. In distant systems, soldiers paused training drills, scientists stopped their work, leaders stared into screens, wondering if they had just witnessed a myth reborn. The man turned from the dais, his back to the empires that had measured humanity as lesser. "We never came here to conquer," he said. "We came to show you what you've forgotten, that every breath, every moment, every step forward is borrowed from struggle." He walked toward the exit, steps echoing like slow thunder. "We don't need your approval. We just needed you to remember who we are." As he vanished into the corridor of light, the arena remained frozen in silence. No victory fanfare, no declaration of dominance, just the hollow echo of realization spreading across the stars. The galaxy, built on pride and hierarchy, had been confronted with something older than empire, deeper than fear. A truth they could neither weaponize nor destroy. Humanity's defiance was not rebellion, it was nature. And as the broadcast ended, one message resonated in every language, in every corner of the cosmos: the universe had just met something it could never tame. Long after the battle ended, the arena remained untouched, orbiting a silent star that had witnessed the impossible. The Council locked its records, sealing the footage behind encryption so deep no one was meant to see it again. But data has a way of surviving. Fragments escaped, transmitted across black markets and deep networks until every corner of the galaxy had seen what one human had done. For the first time in remembered history, the empires that once mocked Earth began to whisper its name with caution. Armies studied the recordings, pausing frame by frame, trying to decode what couldn't be explained by science. They found no pattern, no flaw, no advantage to copy. Every attempt to replicate his movement failed. It wasn't technique. It was instinct refined beyond reason, the product of a species that had evolved through struggle rather than privilege. Worlds that once ignored Earth started reassessing its existence. Diplomats spoke softer, fleets altered patrol routes near the Sol system, and trade requests tripled in frequency. The same beings who had dismissed humanity as primitive now treated them like an unpredictable force of nature. Behind official channels, entire civilizations debated whether to engage or avoid. Some called it respect. Others called it fear. But in both, there was acknowledgement that the order of the galaxy had changed. The Council's dominance had cracked, not through rebellion or war, but through exposure. They had built their empire on the assumption that power was everything. One human had proved otherwise. On countless worlds, new generations began asking questions their elders couldn't answer. How could a species so young challenge the ancient? How could flesh outthink the engineered? Across academies and barracks, instructors replaced certainty with silence. What humanity demonstrated wasn't superiority. It was potential, and potential was the one thing the galaxy couldn't control. Rumors grew into legend. Some claimed the human was no soldier at all but an emissary designed to test the arrogance of the powerful. Others swore he was something more, a symbol chosen by Earth itself to remind the universe that life's truest weapon was endurance. The truth mattered less than the effect. The myth became stronger than the record. Weeks turned to months, and the arena stood vacant. No civilization volunteered for the next cycle. The Council delayed it indefinitely, unwilling to risk another humiliation. Their silence became an admission of fear, and their fear spread faster than any official decree. The galaxy began to shift in subtle ways. War preparations slowed. Border conflicts quieted. Species that once sought dominance turned inward, studying the quiet resilience they had seen in that lone figure. Entire philosophies reshaped around the concept that survival wasn't inherited, it was earned. Yet Earth remained silent. No message, no demand, no declaration of victory. Humanity continued its quiet existence, as if unaware of the storm it had unleashed. This silence disturbed the powerful more than any threat could have. Armadas patrolled the edges of human territory, expecting retaliation or conquest, but none came. The uncertainty became its own weapon. Fear thrives in absence, and Earth gave them nothing but questions. Somewhere in the void, reports surfaced of a small vessel seen near dying stars, always alone, always watching. Each sighting fed the legend further, that the champion never returned home, that he continued wandering, observing, waiting for the next challenge that dared to awaken arrogance again. Centuries would pass before the galaxy accepted that moment as a turning point. Historians labeled it the event of silence. Soldiers memorized it as doctrine. Philosophers called it the day the universe rediscovered humility. The Council never recovered its absolute control, and civilizations that once towered above others began to look at humanity not as inferior but inevitable. And though no one ever saw the champion again, his legacy endured in every whisper that crossed the stars. They no longer mocked the species from the small blue world. They studied it, feared it, and, in quiet admiration, envied it. Because they finally understood what the arena had revealed, that humanity did not conquer to rule. It survived to remind creation that no force, no empire, no god could outlast the will that refused extinction. And that truth, once spoken, could never be silenced again.